AJ Perez from Inside Runner Sports. That's Greg Lucas, San Antonio Express News. We are coming to you the day after UTSA's big win over Lamar, 54-0 in the season opener. Greg, the Roadrunners just dominate this one from start to beginning. Lots of big, exciting plays. Just where would you rate this win as far as wins you've seen the Roadrunners have?
Yeah, it was so impressive. We had to take a day here to just soak it in and kind of ponder it and think about it to be ready to get you guys the recap. So, yeah, I don't even know where you start. I think for me, the biggest takeaway was how kind of, run of the mill and routine it sort of felt, in the sense that it's probably a mark of a good program to just be able to take care of business like that against an FCS team that you should be able to take care of business against, right? And that wasn't always the case. Just last year when they played Stephen F. Austin, that game went down to the wire. And, it's not like every FCS team is exactly the same, and Lamar might have a lot more issues than some of the other FCS programs around the nation. But to play anybody who is capable of putting a team on the field at that level and to be that dominant says something about just kind of the culture that maybe you've started to establish and the strength of the program top to bottom, because you bring in some of the younger guys and they played well too.
Yeah, just on the defensive end, the first shutout in program history, really just dominant. I think Lamar may have crossed the 50-yard line twice.
And it was a record for there's a record for yards allowed too, I think, with 122.
Yeah, just a big game. We saw two forced turnovers, including that scoop and score from Chuck. A dominant effort defensively, right?
Yeah, this applies to both sides of the ball, but the athleticism was just not comparable. UTSA's guys were just so superior in that sense that they're winning all the battles at the line of scrimmage, and they're able to make any open field tackle that they want. And, you see from Sticks' punt return on the first touch of the game for UTSA, it's like they just can't really keep up with them, and they can't get off the blocks. And it was top to bottom, they were just superior athletes, so they were able to kind of do whatever they wanted throughout the game on both sides.
What were some of your takeaways on offense? We saw a lot of dudes get into action. 3 quarterbacks played, a lot of running backs, a lot of receivers. Just what were some of your biggest takeaways there?
Yeah, I think the quarterbacks is a good one to look at. Josh Adkins, we all knew he could throw the ball, and he proved that he's capable of throwing the ball. He hit some really good passes there. And then Eddie Lee Marburger came in and hit a good one across the middle to Cade Stover that turned into a 60-yard gain. So it's just good to get a glimpse of both of those guys. Everything else, I'm not really sure that there's too much to read into it. And even with those guys, it's like they probably get a better test in practice every day than what they got in this game. So I don't know that there's too many conclusions to draw from it, but it's good that those guys got to play in front of a crowd in the live game situation and kind of get a little bit of a feel for what that's like, in case they need to do it more regularly, whether it's in the case of an injury this year or in future years, certainly for Eddie Lee's case. So it's good exposure, and they did well with their opportunity.
Josh Atkins, 11 for 13 for 134 and 2 really good looking touchdowns. So we'll see. He's every time he's gotten in, he's played well. And Cade Stover's the leading receiver in this game, which is weird to consider. Just not a lot of big stats in this one. Hunter Duplessis was 3 for 3 in field goals, no punts.
Right.
From an X's and O's strategy, our analysts, Greg, there's not much here. The game was over pretty much by halftime.
Yeah, UTSA scored on all 8 possessions, I believe, because the clock ran out on the last one. So generally they were able to do whatever they wanted on that side. Maybe there was early on, they could have converted some more of those into touchdowns instead of field goals if you really wanted to nitpick, but it didn't make any kind of a difference. So I think it was good that they were able to rotate. I think we counted up 85 guys about, which needs to be confirmed by the film review of who actually played and who didn't. But I think it was about 85 who got in the action for UTSA. So that's awesome to be able to give everybody a chance to get out there.
What did you think of the environment in the Alamo Dome? 16,229 was announced attendance, a pretty large student section. Seemed like it was rocking, especially when, they got things going early with that punt return for a touchdown, and that felt like that gave the crowd something to cheer for.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear when Coach Traylor said that they had to adjust the headsets because they couldn't hear. And it didn't feel like it was that loud from where we were, but I guess probably compared to what they're used to the last year and I guess last season just is the only one that he was a part of, that it was a lot different to have to work around that environment and the band and everything else that came with that. So I think that it was a pretty good showing, considering that up against a team like Lamar, you're going to see really through history here that it's been, whether it was a local opponent like a Texas State or a UIW, or if it was a Power Five like a Baylor or an Oklahoma State, or I'm trying to think, there's like other kind of games that they've brought in for non-conference that have drawn pretty well. But
UIW.
Yeah, well, like even like a more local one, like a Houston, or a recognizable name like Army. Like you look at all these different kind of things that they've done for non-conference, and those ones draw more, whether it's for all of those reasons compared to just your kind of FCS team from Beaumont that doesn't really, probably not bringing many fans and not getting many people here excited. So it's you have to balance that against the opener, because typically the opener draws better and whatnot. But I just would imagine that if the team continues to do well, that those numbers will go up. And 229 is a pretty good starting point, considering it's double anything they were able to bring in last year with the way the setup was.
Right, last year, and you even look at some of the attendance numbers in 2018. I mean, that's pretty on par for what attendance was that year. So I think with a pretty solid Middle Tennessee team coming in, I think maybe 20,000 this weekend in the Alamo Dome may be kind of the over/under target figure. Greg, what did you think about, I guess, just kind of taking a step back here overall, just kind of all the off the field stuff that was going on this last week? It kind of the team easily could have got distracted, maybe had a letdown this week, and there was just none of that.
Yeah, I think so. I think the biggest thing was having the win against Illinois, and maybe a lot of the positive things that come with that, and trying to stay focused and keep a level head. But I don't know how much the whole cheese gimmick helped them out, but certainly they were stressing it through the week of different ways to keep locked in and pay attention and be ready to roll for whatever was going to come next. And I think that for the most part, it seems like they nailed that, because the energy was all there and they didn't seem to miss a beat coming out of the gate. In terms of like the come and take it or whatever, I can't imagine that any of the kids were like, they're getting rid of the come and take it flag, I'll never play hard again. Like, I don't think that makes any difference for them. Maybe like that day's practice could have been a little distracted if it became a talking point, which it seems like within the building, they at least discussed that it's changing and maybe other options. So, aside from maybe one day where that might've been in their head, I don't think that was going to have an impact. And, there's also a chance that they could have come out less than 100% mentally and still done what they did in this game if the talent gap is just that big. So, yeah, I think that that's a test that just is only going to get harder through the year, in terms of if you keep succeeding, there's going to keep being that praise that comes with that, and the possibility for that to get to your head and inflate your ego and change how hard you work. So as long as they're able to avoid that, then I think that they'll be all right.
Right on. I think you're spot on that one. And, the Roadrunners are 2-0 here. Looking for a 3-0 start. Certainly they're going to be favored against Middle Tennessee next week, but that's not going to be an easy game. How does UTSA keep this momentum up? I mean, Jeff Traylor said he gave his guys a little bit of cheese yesterday after the game, so nachos or cheese fries or something. But I mean, all of it. So certainly they want to acknowledge all the good they've done, but the schedule's gonna end up getting a little bit tougher from here on out.
Yeah, and I forgot until I went and looked back at it. I knew the game against Middle Tennessee was close last year, but I forgot it came down to a 2-point try in the last minute that they could have
very in the balance, if you will.
Yes, absolutely, until the very end there. So I think, but that was the same deal we talked about with Stephen F. Austin, right? Where, these are teams that they probably would think that they would do better against based on how everything played out at the end of the season. And then some of these games were close. And, when you look back at it, maybe they were just kind of some growing pains at the start of last year, with Texas State being as close as it was, and then Stephen F. Austin and Middle Tennessee to follow. And then it was towards the end of the year that you started seeing the big wins against UTEP and North Texas. So, one thing that Coach Traylor said yesterday that was interesting is, when they got to the team hotel, everybody showed up on time for the meetings, and they had their notes, and they sat up in their chairs, and they were locked in. And basically his point was, for most of the time he's been here, it's always seemed like just a mature team that handles its business and goes about things the right way. So if they can continue to do that, then you start to see that the games will play out more to form, I guess you could say, where it's like, if UTSA is better than this team, then they'll beat that team. So if that continues to hold, then I think we should see them do well against Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee played against Virginia Tech yesterday, and they lost 35-14. I don't know about the game, but Traylor implied that it was, a test or a little bit closer than it might have seemed in the scores. And he's always going to do that, I guess, to keep everybody on guard. But it'll be interesting to see what Middle Tennessee brings to the table and how UTSA holds up against that.
You actually looked at their box score this morning, and it was 14-0 before they – or 14-7 at halftime before they rattled off 21 unanswered. So pretty good defensive showing from Middle Tennessee. So I think that's going to be a big talking point this week. Greg, the Roadrunners look to go 3-0 next week. Just did we hit on everything? Did I miss anything?
I want to go back. You projected 6-6 at the beginning of the year. If you had to update it now, what would you say?
Well, after last week, I'd say 7-5. I think we're still on par at this point of the season from the games I thought they lost, except they would lose, except for that Illinois game. I was on the record last week of being wrong about Illinois. I think
well, a lot of people were.
Yeah. I think the Roaders are going to win next week against Middle Tennessee, and it's going to be huge for Conference League play starts next week for UTSA. There's 2 league games that start. I think North Texas and UAB also play next week. So big week for the Roadrunners, I think, Greg.
Yeah, I still think it's kind of hard to find 5 losses with what we've seen from this team and the way the schedule shakes out. I'm not taking too much just from this Lamar game, but it's a lot of it is thinking back on Illinois as well. They just look really solid, and they have guys in a lot of places, and it seems like people have taken steps forward, and they just sort of have it together. Like a lot of the times it felt like in previous years, and with some of the weaker teams that you'll see on the schedule, or even just looking around the country at college football, it's like, we're going to send these 2 teams out there, and whoever can keep it on the tracks is going to have a better chance. But they just seem to have their stuff together with the Roadrunners right now. And I think that gives them an advantage in a lot of these games against weaker teams who are still going to be trying to figure it out, because again, their schedule is just very, very easy. Like Memphis is going to be a test, but they play one of the weaker slates in the nation. I think we'll see how that works out with the analytics when all is said and done, but that's how it was projected coming into the year. And I don't know that anybody in the league or anybody on their calendar has put up any results that would cause you to change that. Like Louisiana Tech seemed like one of the good teams, and I think they played an FCS team yesterday, and it was really, really close. I don't even remember if they won or lost, but they're not winning 54-0. So it's just going to be interesting to see if UTSA can really keep rolling at this level, how that translates to wins and losses, because I think it could be the kind of 8 or 9 win season that people were hoping for pretty easily.
I think Vegas had the over-under at the beginning of the season, 7.5.
I think that's right. And at the time, it felt kind of generous to me. I think, I basically was asked to do a projection. The Alamo Dome Audible guys, they did the media roundtable and how to say what we said. And I basically cheated on it. And I said, I think it's like 7.5. And then let's 50-50 a bowl game. So that's 8-5, which is pretty, I don't have to pick a 12 game record, because I was torn between 8 and 7. And so split the difference in that way. But now it seems like that's like easy. I think that they can get there pretty convincingly just because of the win against Illinois, which is one of the second hardest game on the schedule behind Memphis, probably. And so once you put that in the win column, it changes things a lot.
Are we going to start doing the fourth quarter triangle?
I think you got to use all the fingers.
All the fingers. I'm sorry.
But I think that's right. It's a cool move. I'm up for it. I do believe that it could not necessarily be something that lasts forever, just because it would have to depend if the triangle concept outlasts the coaching staff. And if those guys get other jobs, they're going to take it with them. Now we have 2 triangle teams, and I don't know how that works out. So maybe that's not something that lasts forever, but I think that's something that they can do this year.
Awesome. Well, Greg, let's wrap this thing up. The Roadrunners end up with a big win in the home opener. UTSA is 2-0 to start the 2021 season. That'll wrap it up for this game. We'll see you guys throughout the week and back at the Alamo Dome next Saturday. Greg, thanks a bunch.
Thanks for having me. Take it easy, people.